doesn't matter how tall they are, how short they are, what race they are, what religion they are, what color their skin is. It makes no difference at all, right? Just be a confident person in yourself. Believe in yourself. And I mentioned, but be careful. There's a very, very fine line between confidence and arrogance. It's paper thin. Make sure you keep on the confident side and you don't go onto the arrogant side.
Welcome to the In Factor, conversations with entrepreneurs who started, stumbled, and succeeded. Today, I'm excited to welcome Victor Green to the show. Victor is a serial entrepreneur, born in the UK, and at age 30, started his own publishing company. Today, his latest endeavor, new streaming show called Newpreneurs. So I'm really excited to dig in today and learn more about your background, how you became an entrepreneur, some of the things that you've learned along the way, and about this new show that you're producing. So, Victor, thank you for joining me on the In Factor today.
Thank you for your invite.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to hear a little bit more about your background. A lot of our listeners are either entrepreneurs themselves or they're hoping to be someday. And I think everybody's story is a lot of fun to hear. So you are a self-described serial entrepreneur. So let's back up. How did you get started, and tell us about what your journey has been about.
Okay. Well, somehow I feel I must have been about 40 when I was born, because I had so many interesting things in the world which I wanted to do, particularly with regard to business. I started work actually when I was almost 13. When I left school at 4:30, I would go to a menswear store, and I used to work in there for an hour and a half till they closed, and then I started working there on a Saturday. And I was already getting involved in learning a bit about commerce and things. By the time I was 15, I just couldn't wait to run away from school because I'd had enough. And I went full-time into the menswear business, and after a year or two, I became a manager, and I eventually became a general manager doing the buying. And we had 6 stores at the time. So that was my first interest. I then got a little bit frustrated because if you're in a retail business, you have this plate of glass which is between you and your customer. And you have to wait for him to come to you and open the door. You can't physically go out and drag him in. So it became a bit frustrating on certain days that I could do nothing to improve the business. I then had an opportunity where somebody said to me, would you be interested in changing your career to join a publishing company and become one of the salesmen selling advertising space? So I said, well, I'll give it a go and have a look. So I went up there a few times and thought, well, it's a massive change for me having had a permanent job for so long. Anyway, I took this new job and it became very successful. I ended up becoming the general manager of the company. We had 12 periodical magazines. And then at about that time, there was an opportunity for a new magazine in a new industry. And the chairman of my company wasn't particularly interested in pursuing it. Well, I pursued it, and I felt this has got a great opportunity he's missing out on. I said, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it myself. So I started my magazine. It was to do with security, burglar alarms, safes, locks, and that sort of thing. And the magazine went extremely well from the first issue, and it was just all guns blazing. And then a year or so later, I started another magazine in the fire protection industry. Then I did one in the health and safety industry. And then I realized that the communication I was creating was absolutely superb. I had this audience, but how could I actually offer them more to expand my business? So I thought, it'd be a good idea if I could start an international convention and start a big exhibits with a conference. And that's what I actually did. I then started an exhibition, which was very mediocre, typical downstairs of a hotel, the foyer area type of thing. Did that for 2 years and then decided I'm really going to go for this. I'm going to make it an annual exhibition, moving to the largest exhibition hall in London and make it an international event, which I did. fortunately, it worked out. I created this incredible show. It became the largest security exhibition in the world. And it's still actually running. I sold it many years ago, but it's still in existence. So from that, I looked at the audience which I had, and I've always realized that if you have a captive audience, you've got to find what else you can sell them. You know, if you go to a sports stadium, they're selling you peanuts, they're selling you beer, they're selling you hot dogs, because they have a captive audience. And I realized I had thousands of customers, and each one of them needed other services such as marketing and PR. They needed printing, they needed photography. So I opened businesses in all those categories. And I could go to my customers who I knew to say, well, we can now do your printing for you. We can now do your photography for you. We can now provide marketing and PR. So that's how I started to expand my businesses. I sold my publishing company, and then shortly after I sold my exhibition company. And then I went into other businesses. Main business I went into was a finance company. But the finance company I created was very specialized. It was only for lawyers, which everyone said to me, but why would lawyers want to borrow money? They make so much money. I said, yes, they do, but they're not good at running a business. They're good at fighting your cause, but they don't run businesses well. And I provided funding for their insurance premiums, for their liability insurance, which is a very, very big part. Of course, they have to spend enormous amounts of money. If they're a large lawyer, they may need cover for $1 billion or more. So that became a very, very big, very, very successful business, which I sold eventually to a banking finance company. But in between that, I'd gone into real estate. I'd gone into website design, technology. I created an app which was for clearing snow. It was called the snow clearing app, like an Uber. We were. So a person would have snow, they would go onto my app, click on it, and you would see the truck coming along. So that was a very successful business. I manufactured men's shoes in Portugal. I manufactured a baby's chair harness, which was a harness for children to sit comfortably in a seat if they went to a restaurant. I managed a rock band for a period of time. So I had quite a diverse thing, and I did a lot of business consultancy, lecturing, mentoring, and that sort of thing. So I covered quite a lot of areas and gained a lot of experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so you absolutely deserve the title serial entrepreneur. So no question there. And quite a fascinating background. And there are many things that I'd love to dig into about this conversation. Of course, I want to know which businesses you started that failed, because I'm guessing somewhere along the line a few did.
Absolutely.
But before we get to that, I'd like to know how you think about opportunity, because when we look at successful entrepreneurs, one of the key competencies they have is the ability to recognize opportunity. And that seems like something you learned early on. So what do you say to somebody who says, what do you look for in an opportunity?
Well, sorry. Dear. I hope I haven't lost you. My bracket fell off, and also start.
That's again. Okay. We can fix that.
You can edit that. Yeah. What I look for in opportunity, I think I look at it in some ways slightly different to others. I look at what opportunity I can create which will help other people, and I look at the needs of other people. If you're creating a business, you have to realize that you're not as important as you think you are, because you're not going to be the customer. So what
you're not the hero, right? You're not the hero of your business.
You have to actually say to yourself, if I'm going to sell this idea, you've got to put yourself in the position of the person you're going to sell it to. And you've got to think to yourself, how will it improve his business? That's the most important thing, that you're selling him a product or a service which is going to make his business better. That's the important part. Don't be sort of selfish and say, well, I like this business. Oh, sorry, hang on, I'm doing bad here. So I do apologize. We can edit this, I hope.
Yeah, we can.
And I say to them, don't think because you like the idea, it's great, because you're not the customer. You've got to actually look at the perspective of the other person and realize that you can go to somebody and say, oh, do you know what, Rebecca? You know, you're wearing those headphones. They're good, but I've got another idea. Why don't we put it in with a little bud? And it's going to make your life a lot easier. It's less expensive. So you have to put yourself in the recipient as to what they're going to do to benefit from your idea. That's the first thing. And that requires people to be not complacent. That's important. Never be complacent. And do lots of research. And when you think you've done enough research, do it again. To double check and triple check. Because that's the thing. Because you mentioned before about businesses that I made mistakes in. And I think the biggest mistake I made was complacency to a large extent, and going into a business which I didn't really know enough about. In the days gone by, photography was a different business. It had to go into water. There were negatives. It's not a camera today, different thing. And I decided, I'm going to open a photography business along with something else. But what I hadn't allowed for was the amount of water that was needed to flush through with all of the negatives. And we needed an astronomical amount of water. And I found that in my building, which I owned, in the basement, I had to put in 5 tanks. These tanks were like 12 foot by 12 foot by 12 foot. They were enormous. And so the amount of water, then I had to have pumps to pump it. But not only that, I had to have standby pumps because if one failed, the business. So I got involved and I spent about $500,000, good $500,000 more than I should have done on the business. And it ended up being an absolute disaster because the capital expenditure was not relevant to the return. So that was one of my businesses. So the lesson I learned from that, you've got to do more research. You've really got to go into it deeper. And I didn't do it enough. So I paid the price. So that's the thing I always say to people. Don't worry how many times you've researched it. Keep doing it again in case you miss that little item, which could be failure for you.
Right, right. So great advice, I think, when you think about it, because your first piece of advice in there was, you've got to figure out what the customer wants and how to make it better for them. And then secondarily, the way you find that out and the way you find out more about the business is by doing your research. And so entrepreneurship really is a learning process, right? I mean, with every one of these new ventures, you had a lot to learn.
Well, if you don't learn something new every day, you're not listening. That's my view. There's something to be learned every single day. You've just got to have your eyes and ears open. You must look 360 degrees, look exactly what's happening. I find it fascinating, even to today. I will walk around and look at things, not intentionally, but I may see something. And I think, why on earth are they doing it like that? It seems so silly. And it happened the other day. I got off an aeroplane and the luggage, the way they took the luggage off the plane and got it over, I thought was absolutely nuts, crazy. They could do a much easier system of a conveyor belt directly onto it, but people are handling it and it had to be picked up 3 times. And I thought, well, that's silly. If you had a conveyor system from the airplane, you could only pick it up once and it would come through.
Yeah.
It's just,
paying attention to every little detail, right?
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing there, and finding ways to do things better and more efficiently. And the other thing I heard in there is that entrepreneurship is a lot of work, a lot of hard work.
Oh yeah.
And so you wanted to work at an early age. You enjoy work.
Yes, I did. I just had an insatiable appetite, and I was able to work as many hours as it needed, and I didn't get tired. And I think the reason for that is I enjoyed it. And I always think if you enjoy something, it doesn't become a hardship. I didn't regard going to work. I regarded I was going to do my favorite hobby. And that's how I looked at it. It wasn't an arduous fact that I had to, I'm going to work today. No, I was excited. I'm going to get involved in my hobby, which I enjoy, which happened to be the business.
Right, right. Well, so let's talk a little bit about role models. Was being an entrepreneur something that you saw from your family? Did you
Oh,
always know you wanted to do this, or was it just really that you loved working and you enjoyed business, and this is where your path took you?
yeah. Well, it wasn't for my family, that's for sure, because my parents were not business orientated, and I have two brothers, and neither were they. So I was the odd one out. I just happened to be that sort of a nature of a person, but I just found it very exciting to look at business, to look at ideas, and of course, I like the challenge. It's the same, you take up a sport, you want to be good at it. So you have to dedicate yourself to that sport. If you want to be an Olympic champion, you've got to be 24/7 involved. And if you want to be a successful business person, you've got to be 24/7 involved.
That's
But
right.
but you have to enjoy it. That's the important thing, is to find it. It's fun. It's exciting. If it becomes hard work, then you're not going to enjoy it and you won't be successful.
So always keeping the customer, creating value for the customer in mind, and knowing your product and knowing your space, and the production process has always been key. Now, I noted that when you mentioned your early business, your early step into publishing, you went into safety, I think it was,
Mm-hmm.
and then that took you into several other areas. Do you also look at trends in the marketplace? Has that been an important part of, and is that what led you down that path, or was it um,
Not,
sort of?
not, it wasn't so much a trend. What happened is that it was unusual. The majority of people have a business, and the people that they want to influence are the end user, right? That's the person who's going to spend the money. When I looked at this particular industry, I realized there was another way of doing it, because the people I was going to attract as my readers were people who were referring people to have a job. For example, and if you have an insurance company, they would come to you and say, I want my house covered for insurance. They would come to your house and say, oh, yes, but you've got a risk factor here. I won't insure you unless you put locks on your windows, different locks on the doors, and an alarm system. When I realized these people are very influential, they're doing this all day long, and they must be very powerful people because they can make or break a company. And then I found all the alarm companies and say wanted to get to these people. So I decided, that's my market. I'm going to go back to front. I'm going to go to the specifier as opposed to the end customer. And that proved to be extremely correct. And that's how I got going. I looked at what you have to look at, what is best for the business and best for the customer, which is the quickest way from A to Z, right? But a lot of people I see, and I mentor so many people, they're in a hurry. Everybody wants to be an overnight success. And I always tell them, it normally takes 20 years to become an overnight success. So be patient. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. And it's hard for them when you get very enthusiastic. You want to run faster than you can walk, like a child, but you're going to fall over.
Right.
And that's what I say to them. Please, please take your time. And this is why with the new show, which I'm creating with Newpreneurs, the difference is to any other show is that we're going to provide mentorship and guidance. Not just going to give them money to say, oh, here's money, walk away and do it. No, we're going to stay with them. We're going to help them to make sure they don't fall into the traps that new people do, because I've fallen in them before and I can tell them how to avoid certain things. So that's a big part of the show, is mentorship and guidance.
Yeah, that's so important. So let's talk a little bit about your experience. You've been in TV and producing TV shows. I think you also produced a TV show called Hatched.
That's right. Yes.
And now this one's Newpreneurs. So you've been a consultant, and as a consultant, I think you transitioned into this, and you're also an investor. So let's talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, before we get into the TV shows, how did you think about money as an entrepreneur in those early years? How did you finance your businesses? And now that you're an investor, what do you look for?
Well, finance my business. I financed it out of my own revenue stream. I didn't have any money. I just had to make it work. I didn't have any investors. I owned everything myself, but I just had to work hard. You have to utilize the money that comes in and make sure you don't take it out. So I lived very frugally in early years, but I had to self-generate my own money all the time, and that's what I did. So I never had an investment company or an investment partnership. As I got much bigger in business, I did have bank facilities. Obviously, the banking facilities would have an overdraft or facility with the bank, but I didn't actually have any outside income putting into the business. It was all self-generated.
Do you recommend that for startups?
If you can. Oh, yeah. The thing is people think money is the be-all and end-all, but I have a saying which I want everyone to remember. No amount of money will make a bad idea good. That's what I want people to understand. Just because you've got money doesn't mean you're going to succeed. I can list out companies that have had billions invested into them and they failed.
I think the other issue is that if you have too much money, you don't know where to spend it, and especially early, and not having money forces you to be more creative, I think, and innovative.
Well, then you have to watch every penny and you make sure that every penny is working for you. When you get these, I look at the companies that have these gigantic investments going into them, billions of dollars here, then everywhere. My personal view is I'm surprised that the investment companies put that amount of money into them. I would want more control, because it's like letting a kid loose in a candy store, right? He's never going to stop eating. You put $1 billion into a company, the guys are going to go out and start buying cars, extra staff, travel. That's not what it's for. The money has to go into the business to develop the business, not to make the partners or the investors rich on day one. That comes later. So that's the reason why when I am creating Newpreneurs is to teach people the value of the money and the value of a business and how a business should be run, and make sure that you get 100 cents out of every dollar that you spend.
So let's talk about Newpreneurs now. This and maybe tell us a little bit about how you got into this area of production. You're in LA now, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So is that what took you to LA, or did LA sort of lead you down the path of TV production, or is there no relationship there?
Oh, LA's simple. I had a beautiful woman, so that got married, and that's the reason I was in LA. No better reason to be there, but of course, it's a beautiful place to be. I love living in LA. Absolutely wonderful.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
that's wonderful. So, how did you get into? You continue to produce the TV show Hatched. So, tell us what that one's all about.
Well, Hatched was a program similar to a Shark's Tank type of thing. It was an investment program which we had people would come on the show in the usual format and what have you. It ran for a couple of years, and I think it ran out of steam because it didn't get the number of audience that we'd hoped. But the good thing that came out of it, I met Dara, who, of course, we all loved Dara, and she was so wonderful on the show, and we became very good friends from that. Out of all the mentoring which I've done over the years, the thing which I noticed, that the people who were coming to see me were getting younger and younger and younger, right? Whereas people are averaging between 35 and 40, suddenly they're in their 20s and they're getting younger than that. And I realized this is a very big marketplace. And if you look at all the schools, the colleges, all of them have entrepreneurial courses and entrepreneurial classes. There's, I think, 63 million Gen Z in the United States. And I think something like 60% of them would love to go into business on their own. And I thought, well, they have no opportunity. What do? The schools do it. They have people coming in, lecture to them. They give them $1,000, $2,000 to help. But that's not enough. And I wanted them to have a proper opportunity to actually get into business. So I said, right, if they're good and they can convince us, they can get $250,000 investment in their business. And the important thing is the ongoing mentorship. And that's the most important part. I think the money is obviously important, but it's more important that we teach them to be good at what they're going to do.
I love it. I love it. So what is the stage now of Newpreneurs? Is it up and running? Is it ready to launch?
We've just launched the website, and now we're inviting people to sign up. They have a choice to sign up to watch the show and get free mentorship. Or if they want to pitch, they have to produce a 90-second video telling us all about their idea. And then we will select from the videos we have, and they will come on the show. The show will be 2 people will pitch on each show, and each one will have its own mentor, helping them along to help them with the next stage. We're going to do the actual pitch part when they pitch to the angels. We're going to do it on an avatar format, which we think is great. It's great fun. And you've got the Horizon workshops, which is absolutely fabulous. So they'll go into the Horizon workshops, and the judges will be initially avatars, talking and doing all the stuff. And then eventually, as the show goes on the following day, the judges will reveal themselves as their actual self, and then talk to the people whether they're going to get an investment or not. So that's the basis of it.
Wow, that builds in some of there's a number of those shows. I don't watch them, but the ones where they reveal themselves and people have to guess who they are. So that's really interesting. So so tell us a little bit more about what you're looking for somebody. If somebody's listening out there and they think, wow, this is so you have to be that 20 something.
You've got to be under 20, got to be under 25.
Got to be under 25.
Under 25. Yeah.
Okay.
And you've got to have an idea which you understand and which you think is ready to go to market. Okay. And if they think they've got something which is good, they then pitch their 90-second. Then they will go through a process of us speaking to them so that we can find out whether they're advanced enough with it, whether they've done research, whether they've considered manufacturing, if it's appropriate, what their marketplace is, how they intend to market to that area. So once they convince us they know they've got a good idea, then they can come on the show, and then we'll show them and teach them how to pitch the idea to the angel investors.
Okay, so what's in it for the investors and the show? Does the show take a percentage? Do the investors negotiate that like they do on Shark Tank?
No. We're taking away all that's not fair for children. We wouldn't do that. There's a set amount of money, set figure, right? So in other words, if they're going to get 250,000, they give up 35% of their business. Okay, that's the shareholding. So it's all worked out pro rata if they get 100,000 or 150,000. We don't want to put them through a rigorous debate. That's very showmanship, but it's not right in my view. It's a fixed amount. They know that beforehand. So if they get 250, they know they've got a 35% shareholding with someone outside. They've got the majority shareholding, and we can get going.
So if I'm interested in this, not as a participant, but just I want to watch, where am I going to be able to see this?
We're going to will be 2 ways. It'll be streamed on YouTube and off our website. So they have 2 choices. Majority of the kids, we've done a lot of research, obviously, 99% of the kids all watch YouTube. They've all got accounts on YouTube, and they all said, put it on YouTube. It's easy for us. So we said, okay, we'll launch it on YouTube, and the others who want to watch it on the website can do so.
Yeah. Are you looking to partner with universities?
Yes. At the moment, that's exactly what we're doing, because we've had so much interest from universities, and we've offered to come to them to speak to them. I'm going to, I think, the University of Tampa later this year.
Yep.
And we're talking to everybody, and that's our big program at the moment, is to get into the entrepreneurial classes so the kids are fully aware of what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, it's really, really interesting. So what was Hatched? Tell us about Hatched. That's a similar kind of show, but anybody can be on that show? And is there money?
Hatched no longer is in existence. It closed down a few years ago. But as I say, it was a similar thing to Shark's Tank, where people came in.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
So that doesn't come in around about. But as I say, now what I'm introducing is the thing we had to consider was a couple of things that the kids today don't watch television, right? The thing they live off is their cell phone. So there's no point in saying to them, if you're going to watch Newpreneurs, it has to be 8 o'clock on channel so-and-so. That's not their style. We want them to have the freedom to watch it when they want. So the way we're launching it, they can pick it up anytime. They can binge watch 4 or 5 episodes of it, or they can watch one, but at any time they want to, they can do it. So that's what we provide, is the freedom for them to watch it on an easy platform at a time that suits them.
This conversation, this last line of questioning, makes me think about exiting businesses. So there are times when we have to know when to move on. So how did you make those decisions?
When somebody gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. I suppose
to do something different, right?
Well, if invariably, if you've got a successful business, somebody who's a competitor or an investor will come along and say, hey, you got a strong business there. I might be interested in buying your business. I had offers for my exhibition company over a 5 or 6 year period, but I just didn't think it was right. And eventually, I thought the time was right to accept the offer, and I did. Same with the other businesses which I sold. You'll know when the time is right. And if you've got good advice, which I want my Newpreneurs to have, which will be me and our team of people, will be advising. We would hope that they would be talking to us and saying, look, we've had this offer. What do you think? So we're saying, I think you can do better, or let's structure it a different way, because we have all the experience. All the people that we have who are our mentors have all extensive business experience, the same as our angels, and we can give them first-hand experience, and we can be great guides to their future.
So we've talked about you've got a multi-sided audience that you've got to bring together, which a lot of people do if they launch something, a platform, or so in this case, you've got to also find good mentors. So could you talk about that? Is that part of your networking that has allowed you to build that, or do you have another strategy for how you're building up that side?
Well, we have already got a half a dozen mentors at the moment. We've got the lady with the bugs. She was on Shark Tank and she created a bug spray, and she's a great entrepreneur. We have Carmine. These guys run the Shark Tank investment group. And in actual fact, they are involved in the people who come off of Shark Tank and some going into it. So we've got some Bob Costa. He's good. So we have a good selection of mentors at the moment. And we're adding to it all the time, because there'll be certain mentors who are far more experienced in particular industries than others. So we can actually change the mentor to suit the guy who's pitching.
Okay.
So they're all listed on the website. All our mentors and angel investors are shown on the website.
So I'm curious about the avatars. Are you using AI with that, or
Well, we will be using a section of AI. As I mentioned, there's the workrooms is very, very good. And you can create, the avatars that we create are very similar to the actual person, and you can interact on it. It's a very, very intelligent platform, and AI is part of it. All they will need is the headphone so that you can get into the VR, the virtual reality side of it. But we just thought it was a novel idea, and we discussed this with our working group of kids, about 50 of them, and they said, oh, yeah, we love that. So we got a thumbs up. Okay, we'll pursue the workroom idea. So that's what we would do.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We've actually used a platform that uses avatars that students can practice in front of, and the avatars with AI give them feedback when they're rambling on too much or they're not on subject. And so there's so much we can do with AI now. It's really fascinating.
And we've only just started.
Yes, we have.
Wait 6 months in a year's time, it will be quite phenomenal.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about, you've been a book author as well.
Yes.
So I'm really curious about that. I published a couple of books a few years back and with a publisher, and now I'm doing indie author work. So I'm really curious, some of our listeners might be interested in your experience as a book author. And I see your book. Feel free to hold it up. It's How to Succeed in Business by Really Trying.
I really tried. Quite a simple title, but that's what it is. What happened, the reason I actually published the book was I used to give maybe 3 or 4 talks a week. And you have experience of that. And when you came to the end, people said, can I buy your book? I said, well, I don't have one. So maybe I should write a book. But I wrote the book slightly differently to a lot of other books. What I put in there was my experiences of the do's and don'ts of what you should do in business. And if you're faced with certain issues, you should do this. So I try to make it a very basic, down-to-earth guidance and advice on how you should get involved in business and things that you should do. I've got about 100 chapters of all different things: buying a company, selling a company, talking about the profitability of a company, the importance of having a profit and loss account, why you should have an accountant, why you should use a lawyer. So it's tried to be a very basic book with good, solid information which they can refer to.
And so anybody listening can find that.
Oh, we can get it at Amazon, or just search, or
Barnes
they can buy it
Noble.
or buy it off my website, howtosucceedinbusiness.com. Yeah.
Do you publish? Are you self-published?
Yes, I am.
Yes. That's a whole other conversation we could have, right?
Yeah,
About self-publishing.
Right. Yeah.
There are so many tools now for self-publishers. And,
yes, there are.
And the interesting thing about publishing your book really is that it's up, regardless of who's publishing it, it's pretty much up to the author to build the brand, right?
Of course it is. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. If you're a well-known person and someone's going to pay you $500,000 up front to publish a book, they're going to do it for you. But self-publishing is fascinating. It's pretty easy to do. You can have choices of publishing companies. You can go to the print on demand, where they print one book at a time if you sell it, or you can print a couple of thousand, 10,000, and sell them yourself. There's lots of ways to do it.
So as you think about your consulting work, and how is that? So obviously, somebody with your experience, you've spent a lot of time consulting, and and you continue to do that and invest in companies, and you're doing it now in a really novel way. So how do you make a decision personally about the people to work with? We talked about, creating value for customers, but you and I both know a lot of it is about the person, right? So what do you look for in a founder?
Well, I look for in the founders, one, that they have a solid idea which they've researched. And that's right. I would sit down with them and I'll ask them to tell me what your business is about, what it does. And if they haven't explained it to me in about 3 minutes, then I think, this ain't good. Because they should be able to tell me, it's a widget which will do this, that, and the other, will create something better than this, that, and give me the basis of it. I used to do with the Small Business Administration, the SBA. I used to do this at some of their places, and I'd have 200-300 people in the audience, and they would be pitching ideas to me. And what I used to do is I used to say, "You're on chicken time." What I had a little timer which was a chicken, and you turned it upside in time for 3 minutes. So I said, if that goes off before you've told me about it, I'm not going to let you talk anymore. I want you to tell. I don't want to hear, I was speaking to my mother and my parents said it's a great idea and all my friends thinks it's terrific and so on. I don't want to hear that. Tell me you've got a widget which will do this, that, and the other. This is how it will benefit the customers. This is why it will be better than what's on the market. And so really to teach them to get to the crux of the matter and not go and make unnecessary, presentation, which is boring. At the end of the day, it's the bottom line that counts. So get to the bottom line. Let me hear what you've got.
Yeah, we do that in the classroom with students. We push them to get concise. And
yes.
I always think about that quote. I think it was Winston Churchill who said, "I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one."
Yes.
And yeah, the reality is it's very challenging and takes a lot of time to get that pitch developed, but that matters. That matters.
It does, because the first thing, if you're sitting in front of somebody, in the first 10, 20 seconds, they've already got an opinion of you. They've already looked at you. Do they like you? Do you look honest? Do you look trustworthy? Do you look confident? Are you going to be informative? You do this automatically. You have to sell yourself, because at the end of the day, the thing that you buy is the person. You don't buy the product. It's the fact is, do I believe what they're saying? And is it a person I can trust? It's not a question whether the product's good. So it's yourself. So in those first opening 10, 20 seconds, you want to smile. You want to be relaxed. You don't want to be overconfident, but you want to speak clearly and informative. That's what you have to be. And then you just say, nice presentation, speaking well. and I'm listening to the guy. Oh, he seems to know what he's talking about. So the saying first impressions count. They actually do.
Oh,
Otherwise,
yeah. We're building brand every time we open our mouth, right?
of course you are. Exactly. And they don't realize that. You don't want all the unnecessary. Just nicely go into what you want to say and what you have to say. And at the same time, it's respecting the time of the person you're with. Nobody wants to sit there and listen to a boring 10-minute presentation, which is going nowhere. Right?
Yes, yes. So we talked a little bit earlier about failure and how you've had your share of failure and you've used that as a learning opportunity. Among the 20 somethings, the Gen Z, the people that you're hoping to reach with Newpreneurs, what are your thoughts about resilience? Because I've been an educator teaching that age group for many, many years, and I've been concerned about the lack of resilience among a lot of our young students that I've seen. What do you see there? And what do you think, how might we help them be ready for the inevitable challenges and failures they're going to face?
Well, you're dealing to a large extent with the personality of the individual, and you can't make a person change their personality, no matter how hard you try. What we have to teach them is to be confident in what they have to offer. And this is where it comes into the research. If they continually research their product and understand every aspect of what they have, they will present it in a far better way. They will present it in a confident way. But if they come out and they're not presenting it with sufficient confidence, it's telling me they don't really know enough about their product. They're sort of waffling a little bit. They're hedging around and trying to be nice to convince me, but that's all hot air. So we have to teach them to say, this is the product. Look at it every day, pick it up upside down, turn it sideways, bring it this way, test it this way, so that you can come to me and say, I want to show you this widget, which I have here. This widget is connected to an XYZ. If it's connected to this XYZ, it will create a da-da-da, which will create something else, and it will perform in a way that will save them 19% on the efforts they're putting in. It costs 36% less money. In other words, trying to get them to get to the facts, right? Not to waffle around with the superfluous stuff, because what they have to realize, the person they're sitting in front of has heard it 1,000 times, right? You don't want to, they've heard all the waffly stuff of how lovely and great it is. If you go to them and respect them and respect their time, that's what you have to teach them, is that you have a limited period of time to engage them. And that limited time is the first 20, 30 seconds. That's when you're going to engage. They sit there and they say, good morning, Sue. I would like to tell you about my product, which is the following. You get into it. Get into the idea, but do it with efficiency. Don't be arrogant, be confident, and present it in a way where he sits back and goes, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. And I'm going to sit up and say, really? I can't wait to ask him questions, because he's infusing me with his confidence and his know-how. So that's what you have to try and get in. It's very, very hard, because all kids have different personalities, and I speak to enough of them, and some of them talk to me with their heads down. You know, they look at the floor because it's not their personality. So you have to try and find ways to boost them in personality. And I teach them to talk to themselves in a mirror. Say, talk to yourself in the mirror. That's the person they're looking at. See how you look in the mirror, and say to yourself, you know, that's it. You're actually talking to somebody, and you're looking at how you look when you present this. And I try to get them with motivation for them to realize that it doesn't matter how tall they are, how short they are, what race they are, what religion they are, what color their skin is. It makes no difference at all, right? Just be a confident person in yourself. Believe in yourself. And I mentioned, but be careful. There's a very, very fine line between confidence and arrogance. It's paper thin. Make sure you keep on the confident side and you don't go onto the arrogant side.
It's interesting, because I think you hit on something really important when you first started to answer this question, well, all the way through, but in the initial comment about being prepared. And I think arrogance often comes when we're trying to cover up a lack of confidence and preparation. And preparation, I think it was Stephen Covey who called it the law of the farm, probably others before him. But, it takes time to gain knowledge. It takes work. And that's the missing piece, I think. We live in a world where everybody wants what we call a hack, right? What's the hack for this? And, that just doesn't work with confidence building.
That's right. That's what I said originally. It's the continual research they have to keep doing.
Yes.
That research will give them confidence. When you have an idea of a product, you should be able to answer any question that they put you, but you should be able to answer it instantly. If somebody asks you a question, you've lost it. You should be able to answer any question, and they should be practicing that. So if a person comes and asks them, why would you choose to go to people who be between the age of 30 and 40? Why did you choose that marketplace? Because this is it, and you answer it, right? Why did you decide only to launch it on the east coast of the United States? What made you going to go to that territory? Answer it. So learn what it's about.
Yeah. So let me ask you another question, because I think that you mentioned arrogance, and I've also seen students and young people, entrepreneurs of all ages, get very defensive when someone didn't agree with their research or what they believed. How do you coach someone about that?
Well, the reason they get defensive is because somebody's pierced the shield. In other words, they haven't learned enough. Nobody will be able to pierce the shield if you know what you're talking about. They get that it's this defensive thing because they don't want to be seen to be wrong. So if they think they carry on arguing with them, that's straight away they've lost. If they argue with the guy asking the questions, you may as well walk out of the room. It won't happen if they do the research. They can be intelligent enough to sit down and ask themselves questions about every aspect of it and then keep doing it. They can do trial runs with themselves beforehand. If you can't answer every question that's put you instantly, you don't know enough about it, and you're making me scared to invest my money in you.
Yeah. That's great advice. And I think that, actually sometimes those first pitches are great learning opportunities too, because
they are,
you're not ready for an investment, but you learn that pretty quickly. And you learn that you don't know enough. So I'm excited to look for Newpreneurs and to share that with my students.
Please, thank you.
Yes. And this has been a really great conversation. I always, I know we could talk a lot longer. You've got such a wealth of experience and so much to offer, but I always ask my guests if they had one piece of advice for an entrepreneur who's, or a nascent entrepreneur, an entrepreneur who's out there practicing, what would that one piece of advice? You've already given us a ton, but could you?
Well, one thing I have,
one?
I'll try. There's sanity and there's vanity in business. Okay? Vanity is when people boast about this enormous sales figure, the percentage of this marketplace they've got. That's vanity, showing off. Sanity is you don't care a damn about that as long as you're making a lot of money. So in other words, the bottom line is, doesn't matter what share of the market you've got, doesn't matter how much your revenue is, but if you're making a lot of money, then you're being sane. So vanity versus sanity, I always tell them to look at the side of sanity. Don't be bothered, because after somebody can have $100 million business quite easy and lose money. But I know people who've got a $10 million business who make $1 million. That's the difference. So they're the ones who've got the sanity. The other's got the vanity that he boasts to all his friends that, I've got a $100 million business. Doesn't tell him he's losing money. But the other guys, who's flying first class, he's got a $10 million business. So make sure you get your priorities right.
Do our research and get our egos out of the way and get the priorities right.
That's right. You can't bank ego.
That's right. That's right. Well, Victor, this has been fantastic. Can you tell our listeners where they can find out more about Newpreneurs and reach out and connect with you?
Yes. Well, we invite everybody to go on to newpreneurs.com and they can find everything on the website that we have. It tells you all the judges, the mentors, what happens. We have a Q&A on there, an FAQ, so they can see all the answers to the questions we think they're going to ask. And I think we've covered most of them there. It's free to sign up. And if they want to pitch, they just create a 90-second video, download it, and hope that they're going to be chosen to be on the show.
That's fantastic. Victor, good luck with that. I look forward to following it. And thank you again for joining me today.
Thank you for the invitation, Becca. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. All right. Speak to you again. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this episode and would like to learn more about entrepreneurship, we would love it if you hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of InFactor.